Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Craig Fulton with Evergreen. I'm an advisor here, and my job is to make sure that you get the most value out of your business. And I'm excited today to be joined by Matt. Matt, give us an intro.
Hey, Craig. Great to be with you. My name is Matt Daley, here from Denver, Colorado, which is where VirtualArmour is headquartered, and
Okay.
really thrilled to be part of the conversation today.
Yeah, I love it. Virtual Armor. So, not a traditional MSP. And you joined Evergreen, what, it's been about a year now?
Yeah, so last December, so just shy of a year.
Okay. And what does Virtual Armor do?
Yeah, so we actually are a little bit unique, which I think is an advantage, and we can talk about that more today. So we are an MSSP, which means
Okay.
we focus specifically on the delivery of security services. And most of our clients tend to be enterprises versus the typically smaller businesses that our MSP sister companies work with.
Right.
So we're a bit unique in the portfolio. And we also have realized that's also an opportunity to work together with MSPs, and we can talk more about that if that makes sense in the conversation today.
Yeah, I'd love to get into that, but let's dissect what being an MSSP means and what it's like. Like, talk me through the journey of that.
Yeah. Broadly speaking, we think of security services or managed security services having four different components. And so if you think about at the enterprise level, you would typically expect that all four of these would be part of what you'd consider to be a complete security posture. And so first of those is endpoint detection and response, or EDR. Some people call it MDR, which is just managed
Right.
endpoint detection and response. So you'll hear that
Yeah.
term as well.
I love all the acronyms that come with
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
cybersecurity.
There's
Can't get
endless
enough.
acronyms in the industry, and EDR essentially is just it's all your devices, right? So think
Right.
about that as how you protect all the different devices or endpoints across your organization. The second one is SIM, so that stands for Security Information and Event Management, and think of that um, as a platform that sits in the middle of your IT ecosystem, and it's
Yeah.
pulling in data from all across your ecosystem. So it's pulling it from your firewalls and your infrastructure equipment. It's pulling it from your EDR system. It's pulling data from other core applications you're using for identity management and things like that in your organization. And it's looking for threats and correlations that might identify threats, right? So
Okay.
your EDR system by itself, there may be something that happens that the EDR system doesn't detect that as a threat, but the SIM notices that, hey, here's this thing in the EDR that the EDR platform noticed, and here's this other thing on the firewalls. And when you look at it together, you notice actually that's an attack pattern. So
Yeah.
that's number two is the SIM. The third that we think of is managing the infrastructure itself. And so we think about your firewalls, your other devices
Right.
like switches and routers, and for those that are virtual, AWS or Azure. And then the fourth is something called vulnerability scanning. And so this is something that it is similar to a penetration test, not nearly as expansive in scope. But essentially, what you're doing is at least once a month, you're scanning all your assets across your organization, almost like a little bit of a mini pen test,
Right.
and proactively identifying weaknesses so you can go and remediate those weaknesses before they can be exploited by someone. So those are really the four
Yeah.
areas that we focus on. And with enterprises, again, it's really all four of those that we would generally offer. And then as you get
Right.
kind of into the smaller businesses, then it might be one or two of those services that they're starting to access.
Yeah. This has become obviously the biggest thing in managed services, right? It's like, okay, now we have to start offering advanced protection. And I've always thought of the SIM as like the RMM of cybersecurity, right? Because for the longest time, RMM would monitor devices, look for symptoms, right? Monitoring for symptoms, either auto remediate them or, create an alert and a ticket and say, you got to work on this. And I would always tell people, hey, if you thought the alerts coming out of your RMM were something, you ain't seen nothing yet. Like on cybersecurity, you could be looking at 100,000 a day, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, how are
Yeah.
you possibly going to look through this? And, and I would always say, look, if you look at everything that's ever happened in the news and they start doing forensics, are like, oh, this got picked up 9 months ago. No one did
Yep.
anything. It's
Yep.
like, yeah, it's the same with RMM. Like, how many times did you not look at a ticket and then, oh, we got a computer failed here? And it's like, oh, we actually knew that 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
love what you do. And I
and
love that you're bringing that in. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually playing off of that, I mean, you're hitting on another critical piece of what it means to be a managed security services provider, it's not just the platform; it's the combination of platform, people, and technology.
Okay.
And so the platform, that they're varying degrees of the effectiveness of the platforms themselves. And so you want to make sure you're using a really effective platform.
Okay.
And then you have to have the people that have the right level of training on what do you actually do with the information. How do you
Yeah.
actually set the platform the right way so it's identifying the right things for your security, and you know what to do when those things come through. And then how do you have the process? And so one of the things that also is a bit unique about us versus our sister MSPs is we run 24/7. And
Right.
so we have 24/7, say, security operations center and network operations center, where we always have people that are on shift, actively
Yeah.
looking at these alerts as they come across,
Yeah.
immediately investigating those threats, then deciding on those remediation actions. And if you don't have all three of those pieces, you can have the best platform in the world, but you're actually really not going to get the value out of it. Because to your point,
Right.
the
Yeah.
alert came through 2 months ago, but no one did anything about it.
Right. I'll tell you what, as you're saying that, I'm just sitting here thinking, I am so glad I am not a technician anymore. I get to sleep at night again. I always tell, like, I paid my dues. I worked at a large enterprise help desk for 8 years. I remember all those nights, but I am very appreciative for you and everything that your team at Virtual Armor does to keep us safe. That's exciting. So before Evergreen, then, were you working with any managed service providers?
No, so I actually was new to the industry. So I was
Okay.
working primarily in healthcare, with a technology focus. And so most recently, I was working for a large Fortune 500 global healthcare company, and
Wow.
focused on kind of innovations, technology. So a bit adjacent to some of the things that we do at VA,
Right.
and I was excited to learn a new space.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So, very strategic move then for Evergreen to bring you in. You're forging relationships now through the other, we've got, at current time, we're a little over 70 MSPs. How's that been going?
Actually, it's been going great. So I think historically, so we Virtual Armor had been part of Evergreen for a couple of years, and in our first year or so, we didn't really do a lot with our sister companies. And I
Yeah.
think there was a feeling among some of us at Virtual Armor of, we're just so different, right? We're not an
Right.
MSP. We have a different model of business. We're serving really a different type of client because we're serving generally larger organizations. And so I think there just was a feeling of there's not a lot we can learn from each other or gain from each other. And
Yeah.
one of my kind of early observations as I got to know our sister companies and started building relationships in Evergreen was I think we were missing an opportunity.
Right.
One, in many ways, we are much more alike than we are different. And so some
Yeah.
of the challenges that we deal with, some of the ways that we're trying to support our businesses, actually, I found that I was able to learn a lot from my colleagues at the other MSPs. And the other was, it actually felt like there was an opportunity for us to work together. And so virtually every MSP today is offering some level of cybersecurity services because
Right.
there's demand for it, right? And that demand is
Yeah.
increasing. And what we've seen is, typically at least EDR, MDR is being offered as part of the package of an MSP. Many MSPs are now starting to move over into SIM as well. XDR is another term that you'll hear as well in the industry, which
Yeah.
that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
It's has many different meanings depending on who you talk to. We tend to
Yeah.
think about XDR as a next generation SIM and how we use XDR, so we support XDR as well. And so, kind of SIM XDR, there's demand for it. And so you see MSPs also migrating in that direction,
Yeah.
and even a little bit, you are seeing some level of infrastructure management. Not necessarily the full 24/7 monitoring, but some level of that is pretty
Right.
common. And you're also starting to see some level of vulnerability scanning management. And what typically happens is either an MSP is going out and trying to build their own SOC, security operations center, and it's incredibly complex.
Yeah.
It's challenging to stand up. They're expensive to run if you're
So
not
say
at
it's got to be
scale.
expensive. Got to be
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah, yeah. Once you achieve scale, then you can benefit
Right.
from that, right? But in the early days, it's quite expensive.
Yeah.
And so either you're doing that, or you go and you contract with a third party, to basically provide not only the software but also to provide the service behind it. And what our thesis was is, wow, why are we going outside of the company, right? So if
Right.
we stay within our group of companies, we've already got a SOC built out. It's a mature SOC. It's scaled. It's operating pretty efficiently at a pretty low cost.
Yes.
We have we have offerings that you offer to enterprise, so enterprise level security offerings. And if we can go and partner with the MSPs and we can be their back end security, yeah, we can't independently serve the 20-person company, but when you combine those all together into one
Yeah.
MSP client and they're the client, and suddenly you're talking about 5,000, right, 6,000, seven
Yeah.
thousand endpoints or users. Now that's the size of a client that makes a lot of sense to serve. And so that's been actually really exciting to start to see that come together in that type of a partnership.
Yeah. And I know that, we've recently expanded over in the UK with an amazing company over there, the Final Step. And I know you're like, hey, get me in contact with them because I do feel like in the UK, they're just, I'm not going to say there's some big gap back, but they're a couple steps behind, where we are in the United States. So exciting to see that you're going to start working over there. How do
Yeah.
you feel about that market?
Yeah, actually, so that's a bit of our home base as well. So I'm
Oh,
in
okay.
Denver. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm in Denver. Our headquarters is Denver. Actually, our largest office actually is in a place called Middlesbrough in Northern England. Um,
Perfect.
and in fact, our CTO is based there, and a couple other members
Okay.
of our management team. And so we know England quite well, and we
Okay.
know that market and have teammates there. And so we actually have looked at strategically. Right now, we focus most of our business development on clients that are headquartered in the U.S., although many of them have global operations. But we've actually looked at over time starting to focus some business development on the UK as well and building up our client base in that market. And so, yeah, to have other
Yeah.
MSPs that are now entering the family,
Yeah.
and have the chance to partner with them as a way to build our business and hopefully give them value as well, helping them to, what we found in many cases, an MSP sister company, they can immediately get a cost savings because we can be cheaper than what they're accessing today for
Right.
those outsourced services. And so, we can give them a benefit immediately and give them an immediate, here's a go-to offering for a new service like SIM if they're not offering it. And it
Yeah.
again gives us a way to expand our business. So yeah, it's pretty exciting for us to see how Evergreen is expanding out into some of those other markets.
Yeah, and you touched on a point. I get asked all the time, like, okay, what's one of the benefits then of selling my business and joining Evergreen? And I say, well, you get to work in this big organization that's got all these things, and you're all one of the amazing offers that or offerings that someone gets to take advantage of to, reducing costs is one of the fastest ways to grow
Yeah,
value in a
yeah.
business. So I love it. Look, I appreciate everything you've shared with us here today. I'm sure you've got a lot of exciting little cybersecurity stories, and those are always the funnest. Maybe we'll create like a YouTube After Dark channel where we'll get down into some of the more dramatic things. But I always ask this of the folks that are focused on cybersecurity. What's like the one thing that you just want to tell everyone? Like, it used to be turn on MFA, please. Like, what are you doing? What's something that you just wish everyone would do?
Yeah, I think one thing we've seen is having um, really sound processes for when you have teammate turnover,
Yeah,
how to make sure that you are turning off access appropriately and you're controlling your environment. That's one of the most challenging threats, right? Is you have someone, especially if they were in the IT part of the
interesting.
organization, and have access into systems. Most people when they make career transitions do so in a very thoughtful way, and it's not an issue at all. But every so often you get someone that
Yeah.
has some negative feelings about the transition, and they have a desire to do something negative toward the company. And when you don't have a sound process for immediately closing off access and protecting the company, you leave open these back doors to have some really malicious things happen.
Yeah, and you brought up something that, I've been working with MSPs about 16, 17 years. And what I would always see is people hate doing the administrative work, right? It's like, oh, I got
Yep.
to document
Yep.
something, I got to work in the system. Um, People hate writing process as well. But listen, I was a tech. I feel like I can say this. Like, I didn't like following checklists. It was just like, I've done this a million times. I don't need your checklist. And I think that's something that's biting us with
Yep.
cybersecurity is just that, you got to get good at it now, right? And I tell people all the time, when you're hiring for talent, you got to kind of find those people that do enjoy process, do enjoy being given a standard operation manual to follow because
Yep.
these are
Yep.
critical things. So I appreciate you bringing that point up. Matt, thanks for joining us. I loved having you here.
Yeah. Great to be here, Craig. Really appreciate it.
All right. Those of you tuned in, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.